The most fun thing that I've printed this week, and that I think you should print too, is this incredible flip calendar. It's actually surprisingly easy and quick to print, surprisingly easy to assemble, and look how fun it is when you flip through the dates. So let me show you how to do it. Now, the print profile on MakerWorld looks a bit daunting, but actually you only need 4 of those plates. So you need plate 1, which is the frame for the calendar. You need plate 2, which is the mechanisms. Now, the designer prints this in the same color as plate 1, but I actually quite like it in a contrasting color. Then you need 1 plate with the numbers and 1 plate for the months, and the months come in 3 languages here, but there are alternative print profiles in even other languages. Now, ideally, you would store the numbers and the months exactly as they were on the build plate, but at the very least, store them in a sensible order. Now, the order that we're going to be assembling them in later starts with February for the months, and it starts with number 2 for the numbers, and it works up. So 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever. So February, March, April, etc., etc. I did this backwards because I collected them from February onwards, same for the numbers, but all I had to do was flip it and then it works. Also, if you want to get it exactly right, you should have the bottom of February at the top of your pile and then the top of February, and that's the order that you should go in. So the bottom of the date or the number should be inserted before the top of it. But even if you get this slightly wrong, like I did, it's not a problem. We will be able to work through this. So what do we do after we've printed everything that we need? Well, it's really important to get all the supports off of the frame and do your best to leave no little part of the support on the inside of the frame where we're going to be putting these mechanisms. So I struggled a little bit with the numbers, and even now there's a little bit of friction when I turn them through part of the rotation because there's a tiny bit of a support that was really hard to remove. I was trying to get rid of this with a pair of pliers. Maybe there's a tool that I desperately need that I don't know about. Is this what deburring tools are for? I don't think so, because it's quite like deep inside it, and a deburring tool is more for stuff on the outside. If you have a good tool for this, let me know in the comments. But basically do your best to make sure that the inside of the frame, these round holes where the mechanisms are going to slot in, do your best to make sure that those are clear of any remaining support or any residue. Then we're going to start with the months. My first instinct was to start with the numbers because they're smaller, but actually smaller makes them harder for reasons we'll get to very shortly. We're going to start with the months. So you're going to start with the little white things that are going to hold everything, and you're going to put them inside here and here. Once you've put those things in, you can insert the large rod through the side. Now, something that I didn't realize until I had already inserted this is that it's not symmetrical. So it does matter which way you put it in. If you look at the notches on the side, there's a big notch and a narrower notch. I hope that makes sense. What I mean is there's one notch which is quite far from the end and a notch that's closer to the end of this rod. And the notch that you insert first should be the one that's closer to the edge. And that way, once it's all the way through, the notches will line up perfectly with the circles that you've placed on the inside. And it's important to line up those notches. The reason it's important to line up those notches is because you'll be using those spacer, washer looking things, inserting them over the notches, and those will help prevent the white circles from falling out. Now, if you couldn't figure this out, there are 4 circles that go in on the inside and they come in 2 pairs. Obviously, it matters which ones go in which. The months has fewer holes because there are fewer months. The one with the days needs the circles with many more notches because there are many more days in the month than there are months in the year. Then, once the rod is in, you can assemble the rest of it on the outside, and this will be the mechanism that you'll turn to change the month later down the line. For this, you can refer to the pictures on the print profile. They explain this bit reasonably well. You insert this thing. Now, interestingly, these are different sizes. So the day of the month won't fit in here. This will need the smaller one. Then you'll place this thing, and there's this circle that goes in inside it. you'll be able to screw it in quite tightly, but you have to remove a little bit of support or something that is in the middle. You'll be able to use a nail, I use some scissors, or if you have a very big flathead screwdriver. No, you know what the perfect thing is? This needed a coin. I should have got a coin. That's the best thing to tighten this. And then once that is really tight, you'll be able to turn the rest of the mechanism. How nice does that sound? Now here you can test how well you did at removing the supports and all of the gunk from the inside, because you'll be able to turn this and see if there's any resistance. Now there's a little bit of friction. There is resistance as you're turning it, but it shouldn't get stuck at any point, and you should be able to do a full rotation. If there's slight bits of resistance, you can actually turn this multiple times and the parts will slowly, gradually grind away some of these things that are left over. It'll get slightly easier, but don't rely on this for any big chunks and don't do this too much, because maybe you damage the mechanism by wearing it too much. So now you should have the entire mechanism of the months in place, and all that's left is to insert the actual months. This is the most time-consuming bit, but it's actually quite easy once you get the hang of it. And what I'm about to say is helped enormously by the top comment by a user called HowMark, who mocked me personally by saying that their 9-year-old helped them assemble it in 15 minutes because it took me much longer than 15 minutes. I think it ended up being about 45, so I'm about 3 times slower than their 9-year-old son. But that's okay, hopefully you can do it faster than I did because of me talking you through it. As they recommend, let's start with the bottom of February. And this is the only time where it's really important to make sure that you've inserted it on exactly the same slot in both sides. That's tricky because the rod that goes through them has a notch in it, so they will be roughly aligned. But because there are some tolerances, like both sides of this might misalign slightly, so it might be hard to tell if it's exactly straight. This is easier for the months because the notches are so far from each other, but we'll have to be extra careful when putting in the days. But basically, once you've put in the bottom of February, if you have them in a reasonable order from the build plate, you'll be able to put in the rest really easily. You're going forward in months and you're putting in the top of February, obviously, but then that makes it really easy to know what to put in next, because the top of February, you'll then flip it and you'll see that you have the bottom of March, and then you just look for the top of March, and then you flip it and you never have to think very hard about what to put in next. You're just putting in the top half of whatever you've just put in. Hope that makes sense. You do get a knack for this. The tricky thing is you have to bend them slightly into place. And this is why we're starting with the months. Because they're much longer, you have to bend them much less to put them into place. You're not going to worry about bending them too much and deforming them. They are going to go in quite easily with a tiny bit of a bend. So just work through this. Eventually you'll put in December and then January, and you'll have all of the months in place. And then all that's left is this tiny little notch. Now this is slightly confusing because the 2 notches are different sizes and it doesn't clearly say which one is which, but the month notch is the longer one. So put the longer notch in here and save the shorter notch for later. And now you can test it. So you should have months that you can go all the way through like this. And that is it with the months. And now we can move over to the days. Now we'll start off in the exact same way. We'll put the white thing in the inside and then the inside on the other side. We'll put the rod through. We'll attach this gear on the outside. We'll attach this knob thing, which also keeps the gear in place. That's really nice. We'll put the thing inside it, and then we'll use ideally a coin to rotate it. I didn't realize that, so I was using some scissors. I wouldn't recommend that. There's a small risk of stripping this plastic and ruining it. But again, once all of that is in place, you'll be able to test it. So try to do a full rotation, keep turning it, and it should have a little bit of friction, but not so much resistance, and it shouldn't get stuck. If it is, take it apart and try and do a better job of removing the gunk from the inside. Then it's really simple. We're gonna insert the numbers in the same way that we inserted the months. We're gonna start with the second number, just like we started with the second month. So we're gonna insert the bottom of 2. we're gonna check really carefully that it's lined up on the left and the right. Because there are so many notches, it's easy to have it slightly misaligned and not realize. And the way I would check this is how I did before. I would raise it up on both sides and make sure that it's never misaligned by a huge amount. So if you can wiggle slightly too much to the left, slightly too much to the right, that's how I was confident that it is the correct holes on either side. And then we're gonna follow the same steps. So we're gonna put in the top of the 2, then we'll flip it around and we'll see the bottom of a 3, then we'll put in the top of the 3, and we'll flip it and we'll see that, oh, we have the bottom of the 4, and we'll insert the top of the 4. And it's a bit of a slog. This took me, feels like 10-15 minutes just to do this bit, but at the end of it, you'll have all of the numbers. You'll put in the small peg here, but at the end, you'll have this incredible thing that you can flip on both sides, and you can set the date. And most days, you'll be able to set the day just by flipping this by 1. And at the end of every month, you'll also have to flip this thing, obviously. And then last thing to do is set the date. And that's it. You've got this incredibly satisfying, really fun, tactile, moving calendar for your desk. I had to be honest with you. I'm printing this thing for an upcoming video on the best desk accessories. I used to think that a calendar on your desk is kind of useless and it creates extra work because you have to set it every time. But actually I'm converted. I see the appeal of it now, especially something so simple and so easy to set. I've seen some other calendars which I don't really like. They have these like rings and you have to remove the ring and put it on the new date, and they take up a lot of space and they're kind of ugly. But this is so nice. I love the Lumon Severance kind of aesthetic, like old school retro kind of aesthetic, and I'm really happy I printed this, and this is definitely going to make the cut into that video. Make sure you subscribe so that you're notified when I drop that top desk accessories video very shortly. Hope you've enjoyed this video. A huge thank you to everyone who supports me on Patreon, through channel memberships, and anyone buying stuff through my affiliate links. Let me know what you think of this series of, the most fun thing to print this week. It's my twist on like all the top things that you should print. It's a slightly fresh angle that I haven't seen before. It's usually a huge list. I think it's nice to have like a single thing. It removes that paradox of choice where, there are too many options and then you end up not printing anything. I've tried to improve this after the first one. So the first one, people loved the idea, but people felt like I skipped some steps in the beginning and I got just to like this quite intense troubleshooting. So what I've tried to do here is talk you through the entire thing. I hope it was better. Let me know if there's anything else I can still improve in the comments. Subscribe or your favorite filament will sell out before you can buy it in the Black Friday sale.